Hey YouTube, I'm Phil and today we are making mead. Yep, I said it, we're making mead. And today we're making a very special one. We're making one in honor of Game of Thrones Season 8's premiere. As you may or may not know, I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan. And I wanted to do something a little special for the premiere. So I figured we'll make a dragon's blood mead. So what is mead? Mead is honey wine. I've made it before. I think it's a very simple process. I think it's something that everybody who's starting out brewing should try at least once. It can be a little pricey, it can be a little complex, but you can kind of have a lot of fun with it. So we're going to get started, and I'm going to show you everything you're going to need. So what makes this mead dragon's blood? Okay, so we're doing a cherry mead, so it's going to have this awesome red color at the end. You really can't beat it. But why dragon's blood? So I want to add something a little extra to this one. A little kick, a little something you might not expect as you're sipping it. This is going to go dry, guys. When it goes dry, it loses its sweetness, and all you get is this nice, deep cherry flavor. I want to give it a little something extra, so black peppercorns. This is going to give a nice, earthy, peppery kick to your mead. It's going to be awesome, guys. All you need to make mead is honey. Not really the bear one, but I thought it was funny. Yeast and water. The three ingredients will make a mead. I'm adding a few extra things. We're making what's called a mellow meld today. So we're going to use dark pitted sweet cherries, some dried cranberries, the peel of an orange, and maybe a couple other things we'll get into a little later on. This is going to make a dark, red, delicious mead. I want to have as much product as I can at the end of this fermentation. Mead's not the cheapest thing to make. You're going to need 3 pounds of honey to do so. I want to have a good product at the end, something I'm going to enjoy drinking. And I have a couple tricks to doing that. We're going to start with frozen cherries. Why frozen? Because I'm going to boil this down. When you freeze something like a whole fruit or a berry, the ice breaks down the cell membranes in the fruit itself. It's going to release all that juice. I want that. I'm going to use the whole bag right into a pot. I also want to point at this step. If you look at the ingredients, the only ingredient is frozen cherries. There's no additives, no sweeteners, nothing that might get funky in my mead. That's important. I'm also adding cranberries. Now, this is going to add a little flavor, not a lot, but what it's really going to do is it's going to give the yeast a little extra something, so in the first few days of fermentation, they have something that's going to kind of supercharge them, power them. This is not a nutrient. You can buy nutrients. I'm going to go a little bit more natural with this process, and I'm just going to use cranberries. Last thing. Just a little bit of orange peel. I don't really want the white stuff. I don't want the pith. And I don't want to add the juice because there's a lot of extra citrus in that juice, and it might kill the yeast instead of helping them. All I want to do is get a little orange in this pot. I want to give a little bit of extra orange notes in the final product. It's going to be really good. The next step is going to be covering this with water and bringing it to a simmer. So I added about 2.5 cups of water, and now all I'm going to do is bring this to a boil, and then let it simmer for about 7 minutes or so. That's going to be enough time for everything to break down. One thing I forgot to mention, I'm going to add a couple of black tea bags. Why black tea bags? Black tea is going to give a little more tannins to this. So at the end, you're going to have more mouthfeel. It's going to make your lips pucker a little bit. It's going to be really good. This is not going to add any color. It's not going to add any flavor. It's just going to add tannins. If you don't have black tea bags, skip it. Don't add green tea. Don't add anything with flavors or mints. It's going to change everything about your final product. And unless you know what you're doing at this stage, just stick with black tea bags. Let's talk about yeast for a second. Today I'm using Red Star Premium active dry yeast. This is for wines and meads. I just want to make sure the yeast is alive before I put it into my carboy. So I'm going to add to a little bit of water. I'm going to let it sit for about 10 minutes. And I'm going to see if it does anything. I'm going to use a half packet today. That's a little bit more than you need. But I've actually never had a mead or wine over pitch. And I don't mind adding a little extra because it'll help it create a stronger colony over the first few days. And that'll make a quicker fermentation, a better fermentation, and a stronger strain of yeast in my product. So we're just going to add a little bit of yeast to some water. And by the time we need it, it should tell me if it's alive or not. This is a 1 gallon carboy. Specifically, up to about here is 1 gallon. That's what we're going to put our product to. I want to now put 3 pounds of honey into here. It's going to be sticky, it's going to go slow, so I'm not going to bother showing you me getting the honey in. More importantly, I want to talk about what kind of honey to use. I say, if you only have a few ingredients, use the best you can possibly use. So we're going to use the best honey that I have access to, which is Staten Island's BZB's local honey. You can use any honey that you find. You can go to the supermarket and buy 3 pounds of honey if you really want. You could Amazon it. I might put a link in the description below to some cool honey. But I'm also going to say heat it up before you do this. Either way, it's not going to be fun getting your honey into here. But once you have 3 pounds in, you're going to feel a lot better about it. Okay, so we got 3 pounds of honey into this sanitized carboy. Always sanitize. I use Starsen. There's a bunch of different commercial sanitizers you can use. Use a sanitizer. You don't want this to get an infection or die or become something you don't want to drink. Just sanitize your equipment at the beginning. It's a quick process, and then you don't have to worry. The next thing we're going to do is take our now fruit juice and add it into here. So this has been steeping for about 15 minutes now. It smells amazing, by the way. You get all those orange notes, you get that cherry. This is going to be perfect for dragon's blood. Try to get every drop you possibly can. And now I'm using the same funnel I poured the honey into. There's still a little bit of honey in there. I don't know if you can even see that. But the reasoning behind it is I want to get any extra honey in. Anything you would get from having the cherries in here is now going to be in here. So all that extra room that would have been wasted with fruit, you don't have to worry about it. Now we're going to take a cork and we're going to try to mix in as much of that honey into that juice. The yeast will still eat it. I mean, you don't have to really worry, but yeast won't eat big globs of honey. So just try to get it as incorporated as possible. And when you think it's enough, it's enough. So now, we need to fill the rest of this with water. We can use any kind of water we want. Today, just to prove that you can use any kind of water you want, I'm going to use my own tap water. So I'll be right back. So we put the water in, we have our yeast ready to go. There's only a couple other small steps we want to do before we finish. I don't know if you can notice from there, but I left a little bit of headroom right under the 1 gallon mark. That's so when I add the yeast, that extra liquid doesn't close it off enough where it will start to overpitch. Over pitching is something you want to avoid. It makes everything sticky. It's a mess. Essentially, all the yeast, as they start to colonize and bubble up, they will explode out of your airlock. You want to have enough room just so that that doesn't happen and you could avoid it. And it's not a good time. Now I want to just take a quick reading. So I'm going to take my turkey baster. I'm going to take a little graduated cylinder. And it might take a couple seconds to do this, but it's just a step worth doing. Alright, let it bob a little bit. And then, all we're doing is trying to see what the gravity reading is. In this case, we're going to have a 1.09, which is pretty high. That's probably going to turn out to be about a 16% if it goes completely dry. And I think that's a pretty good thing. Alright, so now we got our reading. We got our must. Must is unfermented mead or wine. I'm adding this back because I really don't want to waste it. There are people who will say you shouldn't add it back, but this is sanitized. The hydrometer was sanitized. I'm not too worried about it. Also, one thing you don't want to forget is you do want to add a little bit of air, some oxygen, into this for the first 72 hours. Basically, the oxygen is going to power the yeast to start eating the sugar. They're going to colonize, and then they're going to keep eating sugar until there's nothing left in here. At that point, this will be a dried product. It'll be alcoholic, fermented. Let's not forget the peppercorns. For the peppercorns, you just want to slightly crush them and just toss them in. I'm adding about 20 peppercorns. I think that's going to give me more than enough flavor. But this is going to be to preference. You also could add other things to this. It doesn't have to be peppercorns. You could add wood chips from like a smoker and give it more of an oaky flavor. You could add chili flakes or some kind of pepper and give it a little bit of heat. For me, pepper is just going to be what I want from this. It's going to be tasty, it's going to be delicious, and the perfect thing for Game of Thrones. The last thing you want to do is just make sure the yeast did something. In my case, we have a little bit of bubbles. That's good enough. Alright, let's slap an airlock on that and we're good to go. So here we are with final thoughts. I want to start you guys off simple with like a nice mead, a mellow meld, something that's not too complex, something you guys can just try at home. It might be a lot of fun. The reason to make a mead or a wine is it's only a few ingredients. It's a very simple recipe, as you can see, and you're going to have this really flavorful, amazing product at the end. This is my Dragon's Blood mead. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be ready just in time for Game of Thrones, so I cannot wait. Anyway, YouTube, until next time, this is Phil with Facts, and I hope you guys had a good time.